Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. We are going out to Hawaii here in just a tiny bit. Ranger Glenn is getting things all set up. He's having his computer to get all set and ready to go. But we are excited to have you join us today. Raise your hand if any of you have been to Hawaii. Oh, I see a few of you out there have. How many of you want to go? Yep. Yeah, me too. Someday we'll get to make that happen. But here's the cool part. We're going to go today. Yeah, we're going to go today with Ranger Glenn, and we're going to take a look at Hawaii's National Volcano Park. For our fourth grade friends who are studying the regions of the US, you're going to be looking for facts and interesting elements that you can determine why this is a great place to visit. And if you are a student studying the biomes, we'll talk about some animals and some other things that can be found here as well. So, Ranger Glenn, are you ready to go?
Ready as I'll ever be.
All right, here we go. All right, boys and girls, welcoming you, Ranger Glenn, to Wichita. I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right. Well, good morning from Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, everyone. My name is Ranger Glenn. I've been working at this national park for about 3 years now, and it's been a whole lot of fun. Hawaii Volcanoes National Park is one of the most unique national parks, I would say, in the country. Just our geographic location alone makes us very unique. We're a very isolated landmass. As such, this has given a lot of the life that found its way here millions of years ago a great opportunity to change into so many different cool life forms, some of which we'll get to talk about today. And here on Hawaii Island, we are also unique in terms of our climate. So we are located in the tropics. Most of our um, ecosystems are tropical rainforests, though because of our high elevation, just on this island alone, Hawaii Island, you can experience nearly every climate biome on the Earth, just this island. So we have coastal dry forests to upland rainforests. We have some desert biomes. We have alpine, subalpine, um, music forests. We have them all. There's a little bit for everybody. And here at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, we're about 4,000 feet in elevation. So right now we're in the tropical rainforest. And if you folks can listen around me for a moment, hopefully you can hear that there are a lot of native birds chirping away up in the canopy. So birds are probably one of the most common life forms to find their way to our islands. Historically, we had many species of native birds. Over time, they've declined in population due to habitat loss from human development and then added stressors like introduction of disease and predators. So yeah, some of our native wildlife is facing some great outside pressures, but Hawaii Volcanoes National Park is one such organization that practices conservation to help give these native animals a sanctuary to thrive. Yeah, so I'm gonna pan around. I'm gonna split my camera, and I'll show you folks where I am. Okay, okay. Here we are. So I'm actually at just outside my office at the national park, located in the park's housing unit. Let me go up, and we have some pretty tall trees here. So that's the canopy up there. Where a lot of the birds are chirping away. Yeah, so we have a great diversity of trees here in our forests. So the dominant tree here in the area that I'm in is called ohia. Ohia is one of our native species, and it's a what we call a keystone species. So if you folks are not familiar with the term keystone, it just means that it's a very important species that helps to support all other species in the ecosystem. So ohia do a lot of other cool things. Not too much of it I'll get into today, given the time, but if you folks want to do your own research on your own time, Kia do a lot of things for our forest. The other one that is also present, and you folks might not be able to see all that clearly right now, but we also have koa trees. Yeah, so our koa trees, I can see them off in the distance right over there. There are other they're called coke-dominant canopy species. So they grow big and tall, just like the ohia trees, and they do a lot of similar functions like ohia, but they do have some key differences. So those are just some things I want to introduce to you today. Okay, let's flip back around. So I'm going to start sharing screen now for a little presentation. Just to make sure, about what time do we have till for the call today?
We can go until 45 after.
Okay, perfect. All right, so pull up. I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint real quick. Get ready. Okay, goodness. Okay, now I'm going to start sharing screen. I might disappear while I'm sharing screen, but I'm still here. Okay. All right. Can you folks see the presentation? Okay.
Yes, we
Awesome.
can.
Perfect. Okay. So this is just an introduction to the rainforest ecosystem here in Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. All right. So some of you might know some things about the rainforest already. They are big swaths of forested areas around our Earth. Okay. Rainforests hold some of the largest diversity of life in the world. There are many species in large concentrations in rainforests. They're also known as watersheds. So rainforests are just areas that collect a lot of water, um, either on the surface or below the surface. So in rivers, estuaries, lakes, ponds, and then in aquifers, which are underground water storage systems. So yeah, so rainforests provide a lot of cool things, and they're not all the same around the earth. Some of them have very unique differences, and I'll share some of those today about our forests. Okay, let's skip that one. Okay, so what is an ecosystem? It's basically a community of living organisms which make up the plants, animals, and microorganisms that interact with each other and their physical environment. Some examples are the air, the water, and the soil. Ecosystems can vary greatly in size and type from a small pond to a vast forest. So if any of you have ever made terrariums, those are like little mini ecosystems. And the rainforest ecosystem, it is a complex and highly diverse natural environment. It's characterized by dense vegetation, high levels of rainfall, warm temperatures, and a rich variety of plant and animal species. So these ecosystems are primarily found near the equator, where conditions are ideal for growth of lush forests. hmm Yeah, so the Amazon rainforest is probably one of the most iconic rainforest ecosystems in the world. Um, Found in South America, yeah, it's located within the tropics, and yeah, it just has the ideal conditions to grow very lush forests. The higher in latitude that you get, or either direction you go from the equator, either north or south, and you move away from the tropics, things tend to get a bit colder. So in our rainforest ecosystems, we have very distinct layers, and these layers are what help rainforest ecosystems be excellent watersheds because with its distinct layers, it can control the flow of water, which is very important. So at the very top, we have the emergent layer, which is the tallest trees that rise above the rest of the forest and receive the most sunlight. So for us, that would be trees like ohia and koa. The canopy layer, it's a dense layer of foliage that's formed by the tops of trees where the majority of the rainforest species live. Okay, so The emergent layer is just like the very top trees that get the absolute most sunlight, and then the canopy layer is just below that. For our rainforest ecosystems, Ohiang and Koa still make up a good majority of the canopy layer. It's just that some of them grow like extra tall. But yeah, in the canopy layer, this is where a lot of our species, like our native birds, who are very tiny, will live. This is where they're protected a lot from the open space. Continuing on, we have the next two, which is the understory layer. So this layer is beneath the canopy with smaller trees that thrive in limited sunlight. And then the last layer that we have is the forest floor layer. It's the darkest layer, receiving very little sunlight. It's rich in decomposing matter and plant life, or decomposing plant and animal matter, I should say. Yeah, yeah. So for the understory layer, we have a variety of species that like to thrive in this layer. One of them that I know of is Olapa, and a fern called Hapu'upulu. So these are the types of plants that like to grow in just limited sunlight. So they don't need full sunlight like the canopy trees do. They can thrive in partial sunlight. And what they do is they help to shade the forest floor so that the soil remains pretty moist and there's a reduction of water loss. Yeah, on the forest floor, this is where a lot of plant matter in the form of leaves fall down and they decay. So below me, I see a lot of leaf litter. That's really important. Leaf litter acts like a mulch to keep the soil nice and moist so that it doesn't dry out and so that water has time to seep into the earth where it's collected in the aquifers that I mentioned earlier. Okay, so we're going to look a little bit closer at some of the plants and animals that live in each of these layers. So for the animal, we have our eel or Hawaiian hawk. So these are very powerful birds of prey, and the eel is known for its very keen eyesight and sharp talons. They perch in the tallest trees, scanning the forest below for prey, which includes birds, small mammals, and now reptiles. For plants, the one I have featured here is koa. Koa is one of the faster growing native species in Hawaii. They can be over 100 feet high, and their wood is strong, so birds like eel like to make their nests in them. Their branches are very, very strong. Their broad sickle-shaped leaves of koa are great at condensing water in the air and allowing it to drip straight down. One of the ways that we get a lot of our moisture in the forest is not just the rain, but also fog and mist. So koa leaves, the way that they're designed, they're broad shaped and sickle shaped. So they're great at condensing all that liquid in the air and it drips straight down to where it needs it the most, which is its roots. Moving to the canopy layer, you have a few examples of some plants and animals here. One of them, the first is called the apapane. Uh, it's a nectar feeder. It's the most common native bird that you'll see here in the park, and that's the bird that you hear chirping right now. And the part of the park that I'm in right now, they live pretty densely here in the canopy, and in the mornings they tend to be very active, so they're calling to each other. The next bird is called the elepaio, which is at the bottom. Elepiles are insect eaters. So these native birds have evolved special whiskers at the base of their beaks that allow them to catch insects mid-air. The whiskers help them do this because they're very sensitive. They can detect small changes in air pressure, which allows them to track the movements of flying insects. And then for the plant, we have, as I mentioned earlier, ohia. So ohia are they're slower growing native trees. They provide nectar for birds and are very important for our watersheds. Yeah, so the red flowers pictured on the ahia tree on the right produce very tasty nectar that our apapane on the left love to sip nectar from. They have just the right shaped beaks to get to the base of the flowers and sip them out. And as such, they're a pollinator for ohia. As the apapane flies from one flower to another, its face is getting brushed with pollen, and as it goes to different flowers, it transfers all that pollen. Right, in the understory layer, we have some pretty cool animals. First one is the carnivorous caterpillar. Yes, we do have caterpillars that do exhibit predation behavior. So these insects are on they're small insects, so they wait perfectly still for the chance to snatch prey. So they're an ambush predator. They're not very big though. The image you see here might be a little deceptive. They're maybe about an inch long. Yeah, so they're like little inchworms, but when they are still, they look just like a little branch, and they just wait for insects to come by, and then they have such lightning fast reflexes. They just move at one time and they snatch up the insect. It's really cool to see. Next up, we have butterflies. So our native butterfly is called the pulilihua, and these insects they feed on nectar and aid in pollination, much like a papane. And then the last one we have are bats. So our bats are called opeapea. These mammals hunt at night for insects, and they are the small variety of bats. Okay, and the last forest floor layer, we have some, a few animals. We have our native happy face spider. Our native spider is called Nananana makakii. Yeah, so the happy face spider are ultra tiny arthropods. They're almost translucent and they're very difficult to see. Um, how small they are, they can fit under your pinky nail with room to spare. They're about maybe 5 millimeters long. So the image that you see is a little deceptive. It's super zoomed in. Because of their small size and translucent bodies, like I said, they're very difficult to see in the wild. You really have to know where to look. They tend to be on the underside of leaves where they're protected from the rain. Yeah, so they hunt for very small insects. Um, Another animal that we have, this animal, the moa nalo, this flightless bird, it's now extinct. Um, yeah, so they once sprawled all across the forest floor around Hawaii in ancient times, but unfortunately, because they did not know to fear humans, they were very docile, and as such, they were hunted pretty much into extinction. Poor birds. But we have found fossil records of them in the past through mainly charred bones and sometimes intact skeletons in lava tubes. So yeah, we know these birds existed. They're just not around anymore. And then the last one, decomposers, right? So decomposers are important for any ecosystem, right? Things make waste, and waste needs to be disposed of properly. Otherwise, it'll just stack up and be a very big problem. So the most common decomposers we have are mushrooms or fungus, and of course worms. So decomposers are very vital to the rainforest ecosystem, so they ensure that the nutrients continuously recycled and made available for other organisms. So all that leaf litter on the ground, all the fallen logs in the forest that you see, and then any animals that die on the forest floor, they get broken down by all the decomposers, the fungus, the worms, the bacteria, and that nutrient gets released back into the soil where it can be dispersed amongst the animals once again. So very, very important all around. All right, so we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about some, excuse me, plant and animal adaptations. Okay, so what are adaptations? They are basically features of a living organism that help it to survive in an environment. Right, so something about that organism helps it to survive better in where it's living. And we have three different types of adaptations. So the first one that we have is called a behavioral adaptation. This is basically unique behaviors that give animals an advantage, right? So one type of behavioral adaptation could be what time of day the animals are active. Are they active during the daytime or active at nighttime? The second one we have here is physiological adaptations. So this is like something physical about, or something about their physiology, like internally. So these types of adaptations are processes in an animal's body that enable them to compete. So not just animals, though, but plants too. So physiological adaptation. One of them is venom. Okay, some animals develop venom glands and ways to inject them into animals to help them hunt better or to defend themselves. Um, some plant species produce toxins in their vascular system that make their leaves very just not tasty to eat. So it's a chemical defense to keep grazers away. Structural adaptations are our last one, and these are just like the pure physical traits that help animals compete in their environment. So one example for animals are black bears. Black bears have very unique long claws that help them climb up trees, so they're excellent climbers. For plants, structural adaptation would be thorns, right? Those are physical defenses that the plant creates to deter other animals from eating them. Okay. So to be more specific about our animals, one really famous group that we'll talk about here today is the Hawaiian honey creepers. So these are just a family of some of the many native birds that have existed in Hawaii for millions of years. The beaks of these animals are especially adapted to feed on certain types of food, from insects to fruits and seeds to flower nectar. Okay, so this little diagram I have here on the right shows the different groupings of the birds in the honeycreeper family. So there are about five altogether. Uh, we'll start from the top right and work our way clockwise. So first one is the nectivores. So these birds have developed beaks that are perfectly shaped for sipping nectar from flowers, and some of the nectar sippers have co-evolved with certain plant species to be. So that just means that they're highly specialized. So the bird that is red with that kind of pinkish curved beak hanging upside down from that branch, that's called Eevee. Eevee have that little curved bill that is perfectly shaped to reach into certain tubular flowers of our plants to sip nectar from the very bottom. In comparison to some of the other birds in the nectar sippers, their beaks are either too short or not the right shape to be sipping nectar from the flower effectively. If they're not the right shape, they could damage the flower. Yeah, so some of our native birds are super specialized to sip nectar from very specific species of flowers. Okay, moving clockwise, we have the fruit and seed eaters. So by contrast, these beaks are very differently shaped. They're a little more stout, broad, and some of them have little curvatures to the top bill, while others remain pretty even. So these birds' beaks are specially designed to crack open hard seed casings or rip open seed pods or to rip into the flesh of fruit. Okay. The one pictured on the branch in this grouping is called Palila. This is actually a bird that I've worked with specifically in the past. Their beaks are especially designed to rip open these really tough seed pods from our native tree. And once they rip open that seed pod, they dig out the immature green seeds in those pods. And they're the only birds who are capable of doing that. Um, that's because the seeds produced by that native tree have high levels of a compound called alkaloids, which are very, very toxic. So this animal is co-evolved with this tree to be able to eat those seeds and not be harmed. Okay, moving to the next group, we have two categories of insect eaters. We have the bark pickers and the gleaners. So the bark pickers have usually a different shaped bottom bill and upper bill, and this allows them to hunt for insects that are beneath the bark of trees. So the one on that branch is called an Akia pula'au. It uses its straight, sharp bottom bill to tap the bark of the tree, and what it's doing is it's sensing for grubs. When it finds a grub, it uses that bottom beak to bore a hole in the bark, and once it does, it uses the top bill that's long, slender, and curved, and it just hooks them right out, and then they're able to eat it. It's really, really cool to see them hunt. And then the other group of insect eaters are the gleaners. So these birds have sharp but narrow beaks, which are perfect for nipping at insects that crawl on the bark of trees or on the leaves. So two different types of insect eaters, the bark pickers and the gleaners. And then the very last group is called the generalists. these are the types of birds that didn't um, evolve special adaptations to specialize in any one type of food. They can eat a variety of things. So they can sip nectar, they can eat small insects that fit in their mouths. They can also eat small fruits and seeds. They can get so as a generalist species, they tend to be a little more resilient or resistant to disturbances in the environment. So if they lose one source of food, like say they lose their favorite type of berries to eat, they won't be in trouble as much. They can shift gears and focus more on eating insects that are still available or the nectar of flowers that are still blooming in the area. Others
And
specialize.
Ranger Glenn,
Yeah,
hey, we've only got just a couple of minutes left. So if we could go back to kind of the view that we can see where you are, we've got a couple of questions that we need to answer, if that
no,
works.
yeah, that's fine. This is pretty much the last slide.
Okay.
All right, stop share. All right, stop presenting. Go.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you. So, a couple of questions that the students are wondering is there a chance where you walk around, which of these animals do you see most often?
I see aquapane the most often, the red native bird that I mentioned earlier. Yeah, they are constantly fluttering in the canopy, and sometimes I see them flying out in the open by the cliff sides too. So that's probably the most common native animal that I see. I also see non-native animals here, called a caliche pheasant. So they're these little, we call them lava chickens. That's kind of what they look like. Yeah, they just have free roam of the place. They walk all around. They can fly, but they choose to walk on the ground mostly. They don't really have predators here. That's why.
And then we have a very big question. Are there any volcanoes erupting today?
Oh, unfortunately, no. Our volcano has gone into a pause right now. We just finished episode 13 of a series of eruptions that have been happening since December 23rd of last year. Um, so that's part of the reason why I'm at this location and not out at an overlook. It's still smoking right now, so it's just recharging its magma chamber so that maybe in the next few days or so it'll be ready to erupt again. That's been the pattern that we've seen for this eruption is that it seems like every 4 to 6 days it'll erupt for about 12 hours or so, and then it continues that cycle again. That's what the last several eruption episodes have been like.
Very nice. And Mason wants to know what season you're in.
That's a really interesting question. So seasons are very different here in the tropics. We don't have major seasonality like fall, winter, spring, summer. We have wet and dry season. So right now we're entering our more dry season right now. So the winter time of the year, so like the winter months going into summer, yeah, this is kind of like our drier season. And then we're not, no, we are in the wet season, but this wet season's been a little bit dry. We're in our
Okay.
wet season, transitioning to the wet season soon for summer.
Very cool. And then one, can we take one last little pan around of the space?
Yeah.
And this is near your office, so you've got kind of an outdoor seating area, but you get this look at the forest all day long. That's not a bad view.
Yeah, and there are even better views around the park too. Yeah, there's my office, tucked away in park housing. There's a really big ohia tree right here. You can tell just by its sheer size, it's pretty old.
How old do you believe that tree is?
I would say it's definitely over 100. These trees tend to be very slow growing. And it's kind of like multi truncated. It's just it's formed multiple trunks. Yeah, so older trees tend to do this a lot more than younger ones. Yeah, but just
And
looking at the size, yeah, these trees are very old.
the students want to know if they're good for climbing.
They can be, but I'll get a closer look. Their bark tends to be a little bit flaky. So especially when they're wet, they might be a little slippery. So if you find a nicely like multi-truncated one, they're climbable.
Nice. And because we didn't get to see volcanoes today, is there a place that we can go online and watch a live cam? Is that available there at the Hawaii National Park website?
Yes, there is. Sorry, I'm gonna turn this around. Yes, there is a link provided by USGS, Hawaiian Volcanoes Observatory. They have a link to a live stream webcam on YouTube. So I can send you the link in the chat later, or if you want to try just Googling Kilauea live stream and make sure that on the YouTube link it says USGS. It'll take you to a live like. So if you ever want to see what the volcano is doing, just look at the live stream view. It's constantly running, and sometimes they change the location. But on our website, we also have access to other webcams that take still photos periodically, so you can keep an eye on what the volcano's doing too. But the live stream is probably the best one.
And I just dropped it in the chat, so everybody should have that here with them now. Thank you, Ranger Glenn, for giving us a tour of the animals and a little bit about the plants that are in Hawaii National Park. We hope you have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for being patient. Sorry it took so long.
It's all good. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, have a great day, everyone.